What are the 15 best weapons in Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erdtree? Now the DLC has been out for a little while. We've been able to play around with all of the brand new weapons, plus all of the old weapons in the new gear. What are the 15 best? Let's go. Now, there are a ton of really high quality weapons in Elden Ring, and to nail it down to 15, in some regards, you're splitting hairs in what weapons either make the list or in certain ranking, like what goes before certain weapons. There's like some inherent like personal bias there. So I've done my best to remove some of my personal bias, but to some regard, like what works for me may not actually work best for you. So your personal top 10 may actually be different. I would love to see your personal top 10 in the comments down below. I also don't want to hear any criticism about what's on this list or the order without you providing your own list in the comments down below. All right, can we be fair that way? Let's start with number 15. That is the Moonveil katana. Now, speaking of personal bias, here's my favorite weapon.
Got him!
Yeah, so I didn't want to put this on the list, and I wasn't going to. I played around with that new ancient meteoric greatsword, and then also the spear of the impaler, and a few other like old weapons as well to potentially fit in this spot. But you just can't go wrong with the Moonveil katana here. Like, it's obviously had its nerfs over time, but it's still fantastic. Like, it's a physical and magic katana. It's got bloodlust build up natively with Rolana's cameo as well. You get extra damage when you hold that stance, which is with that new talisman. Obviously, the Shard of Alexander is fantastic. Plus, it's a magic damage benefits here as well. So you've got the magic scorpion charm, the spellblade set, which buffs your magic attack power. Obviously, the magic shrouded tier for your physique flask as well. It all really revolves around transient moonlight for this weapon. Now, even though the poise and the stance damage of transient moonlight, especially the strong attack, like that vertical slice when you pop that out, that damage has definitely gone down. So it's a lot harder to still trigger that effect, though you still can, right, with the Great Bade Phalanx if you like combo those together, which is a fantastic combo still today. But it's not as overpowered as it used to be. It's still a fantastic weapon, and it did just sneak into this list. Marais' Executioner's Sword is number 14. This is a great sword with physical and magic damage again, but it scales with strength and arcane. What's great about this weapon is everything revolves around the Echoed's dancing blade, where you put the weapon forward, you do like that corkscrew attack for a little while, and then you'll like do a slicing to like finish the animation. You can charge this attack, so you can increase that damage with, Godfrey's Icon, for example. Now, that corkscrew animation will also trigger things like the Rotten Winged Insignia, Millicent's Prosthetic, all of those successive attacks buffs, the Thorny Cracks tier, it all gets benefits from that as well. Plus, the new Dancers set does actually buff the damage even further as well, because this is technically like a dance. And the new Dancer set does buff dancing skills, so you also get the benefits from that as well. So there's a bit of additional benefits with this weapon. Plus, it's a great sword, so it's got that really nice attack combos and decent amount of stance damage as well to follow up with critical hits, especially when you're leaning into the Echoed's dancing blade. While being stealthy and assassinating isn't a very viable build in Elden Ring, it definitely is in Assassin's Creed, and now in Magic the Gathering with the new Assassin's Creed Universes Beyond set. Thanks to Wizards of the Coast, I've been playing this new set and having an absolute blast. I played some on stream the other day and won 2 of the 3 games after opening the starter pack and some booster packs as well. I got these incredible Evie and Lydia Fries. I'm just missing Jacob, sadly.
Am I looks?
I guess I'll just have to go and buy more. It's not just about the cool art though, which there is plenty of. The free running mechanic makes it feel like Assassin's Creed. When free running, you can summon a creature or cast a spell for a significantly cheaper cost after you have dealt combat damage to the player with an assassin, allowing you to fast track your board to get multiple assassins or spells out in one turn. I love this new mechanic and how it fits within like the parkour theme of Assassin's Creed. I've never really been much of a Magic the Gathering player myself, but I do love that they've been doing these crossovers with some of my favorite franchises, like also the recent Fallout sets. But how about an Elden Ring set, hey? Maybe? Let's talk, Wizards. If you want to check out this amazing new set or any of the other Magic the Gathering cards, click the link in the description down below. Thank you, Wizards of the Coast, for sponsoring this video. Number 13 is the Giant Crusher. You can't really make a weapon list like this for the best weapons in the game without mentioning the highest attack rating weapon in the game. Now, as of patch 1.08, the poise damage of colossal weapons was reduced, so it's not as OP as it used used to be, but it is still an incredible weapon, right? It's got that unique R2 animation, which is basically a free lion's claw. A little pet peeve of mine is it always triggers me when people put lion's claw on this because you essentially get it as your R2 animation anyway. Plus, if you just charge it as well, you get the benefits from using the axe talisman there. Now, fantastic thing you can put on this is just like Crag Blade to increase your physical attack damage or your poise damage. You've also got benefits from some of the new talismans here as well, like the new two-handed talisman, as well as the Blade of Mercy for extra damage after you have filled a critical hit, which you'll definitely be doing plenty of those with the Giant Crusher, so you've got the benefits there. Number 12 is the Wing of Astel. This is a physical and magic curved sword with two major benefits. We'll start with the weapon skill, Nebula. So you shoot the natural born stars like forward into like a little magic attack damage that like explode. These do fantastic damage, especially on large enemies where you can get a lot of these explosions hitting them. It is magic damage here, so all of those magic damage buffs that we talked about with Moonveil Katana is obviously fantastic. And on top of that, you've got the unique R2 heavy attack that creates like a magical ranged attack that costs you no FP. So you've got fantastic ranged here if you wanted to run a magic build without leaning into spells at all. You can charge this, so you've obviously got the benefits there from your axe talisman. You could even run this in, say, like a dual wielding build with some other curved sword in your second hand. Then you get all of those fantastic like dual wielded curved sword combos, plus having a unique like ranged attack, which is typically the downside of running like a two-handed build. You don't have any range. This gives you an option in that way. Just a fantastic weapon overall. Number 11 is the Claws of Night. This is another physical and magic damage. However, this is a claw weapon, so you get some interesting attack combos with the claw weapon. It has pure dexterity scaling, which is quite unique. It does have passive bleed buildup, which is fantastic. Now, the heavy attack is actually a throwable. You'll throw the weapons with the heavy attack, which is kind of okay. You don't really use it that much, especially because of scatter shot throw, the weapon skill, which is like the main reason here. You'll shoot the claws out in like a shotgun blast, and for some strange reason, it does absolutely incredible blood loss buildup. Now, because this weapon has such great damage scaling as well for one of these weapons, like most of these weapons that have, say, like scattershot throw or these like throwable weapons don't really have great overall damage, like all the Smith script weapons and stuff. So the Claws of Night gets like a typical sort of Smith script style setup, but while still having great damage scaling, and then scattershot itself, it just procs bleed insanely fast. Like I suspect they'll probably tone that down a little bit, considering you can hit enemies with like one or two of like the shots that come out and still proc bleed almost on like every second or third scattershot throw that you do pull out. And then you get the benefits from, you know, Winged Sword Insignia to Millicent's Prosthesis to the Lord of Blood's Exaltation to Thorny Cracked Tear for all those excessive attacks and blood loss build-up stuff that you can absolutely trigger fantastically with the Claws of Night. Number 10 on this list is a bit of a two-parter. It's the Scavenger's Curved Sword or the Bandit's Curved Sword, though personally I've always leaned towards the Scavenger's Curved Sword. The Bandit's Curved Sword do have higher base physical damage, over the Scavenger's Curved Sword have like native blood loss bleed up in them, so you don't have to put it on them, and you could then add a secondary status effect, which has even gotten better with the DLC, right? So now we touched on all of those excessive attack benefits that you get with the Claws of Night. All of that is exactly the same, like relevant here. Here as well, you could say put Seppuku on your secondary curved sword here to give you increased attack power, as well as triggering blood loss to trigger those Lord of Blood's Exaltation effects as well. Now with curved swords, when you're dual wielding them, you've got that amazing 4-hit jump attack combo. So if you're using, say, the Scavenger's Curved Sword with blood loss and, say, poison equipped as well, you're going to trigger both of those effects very quickly. And now that you've got the Poison Flower Blooms twice as an Ash of War, that will then trigger that poison effect for like a massive pop of damage. You've got the benefits there that, you know, in a couple of instances I've been able to trigger that. You obviously get the poison trigger that takes off a chunk of health, and then actually trigger blood loss at the same time to get even more come off there as well. So plenty of value and diversity with these weapons, because you can change the Ash of War, you can do different things, but status build-ups, these are still absolutely the king. Number 9 on this list is the Sword of Night and Flame. Now, you probably know what this weapon is, but it's still really good, and it's gotten slightly better with the DLC. DLC as well, right? So the Night and Flame stance is the key thing here. A normal attack will trigger like the Night Comet sorcery, and the strong attack, you'll spin around in a circle and like do some flames. Now you can buff this with the Shard of Alexander. For the magic attack, you can buff it with your Magic Scorpion Charm, your Spellblade set, as well as the Magic Shrouded Tear. Plus, if you stand in Terra Magica, it does also increase your attack power as well because it is a magic attack. Now on top of that, you've also got Rellana's Cameo. Because this is a stance, you can hold that stance for a couple of seconds. Once you do, you can then trigger that effect. If you get like a perfect scenario where all these like damage things stack up, the standard like light attack, the Night Comet sorcery off that stance does like just so much damage that is quite ridiculous, and it's still extremely strong. Like, it's not a weapon that is like cool to put on a list like this, but it is still really good. That's not even talking about the fact that it's got that fire damage that you can buff with your Fire Scorpion Charm, your Flame Grammy Strength, your Flame Shrouded Crack Tier, all that great stuff as well, right? So it's so diverse as well, because you could run it as Intelligence, you could run it as Faith, you could run it in its own thing. You've got plenty of potential there, plus the insane damage it does. So number 8 is the Naga Kiba. This is the longest and most versatile of the katanas, which is one of the best weapon classes in the game. Now it comes with Unsheath, which you can absolutely change. Like, it's fantastic on its own right, because it's so versatile, and you could add any types of damage to it. You could add a status effect, etc. Plus with Rellana's Cameo, you can obviously get the buffs from Unsheath there as well, because it is a stance as well. Now what's great about this weapon is really its versatility, because you can use it in literally any kind of setup. Plus it's so long.
That's what she said.
It has fantastic like damage scaling. You've got so much potential to just like, if you're never sure what weapon to use, you can just grab the Naga Kiba, like put whatever Ashes of War you want on it, and you've got just like an incredible build just like that, right? It's just so fantastic in that way, because you can do so much with it with like very minimal effort. The Star Fist is number 7 on this list. This is a physical only fist weapon that comes with a blood loss buildup natively. Now the main reason you'll use this is for the amount of insane poise you get from a charged heavy attack, plus the benefits you can get from that from the Axe Talisman, as well as comboing that with something like the Blade of Mercy for when you do knock the enemies down, you can follow up with a critical hit to increase your attack power, and comboing this with like Cragblade is just fantastic as well. So the Starfist is still fantastic, and obviously all the successive attack things we've talked about in this video are great here as well, but it unfortunately sneaks pretty highly on this list. I did have a build using essentially this or the Iron Balls as well, which I'll link here if you want some more information about this weapon. But moving on to number 6, that's the Great Sword itself. This is a colossal sword, even though it's called a Great Sword. Now this comes with Stamp Upward Cut, but you're probably going to change that to something else, right? Say for example, the Savage Lion's Claw is fantastic on this weapon. You've also got things like the Spinning Gravity Thrust, which is what I would personally be putting on this weapon, because you get the benefits from the successive attack things like the Winged Sword Insignia, Millicent's Prosthetic, etc. Plus with that, you could then say add a Blood Infusion or any sort of status effects you like on top of that. Then you get those benefits from the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, plus all those successive attacks. It's an incredibly versatile weapon, very similar to say the Naga Kiba that we put on this list, that you got all of those benefits from the versatility of this weapon's movesets, plus being able to add all these Ash of Wars onto it, combine it with anything you like, get some fantastic scaling on top of that, great stance damage to easily follow up with then critical hits to get the benefits from Blade of Mercy or something like that, plus the Two-Handed Talisman as well is fantastic for this weapon, just like it is with the Giant Crusher or any of those weapons that you are two-handing, you get all of those benefits from it as well. Number 5 is the Death's Poker. This is a great sword that does magic and physical damage. It has a unique R2 animation where you sort of like zoom yourself forward, slice the weapon up in the air. Comes with native Frostbite builder, which is quite unique and fantastic for a weapon with this amount of quality damage scaling. Plus it has the Ghost Flame Ignition Ash of War, where you'll like shoot some Ghost Flame in front of you, and then you can slam the weapon down to like explode it, and not only deal solid damage, but very quickly get Frostbite triggered on the enemy. Now you can buff this with all of your magic stuff, from the Spellblade set to the Magic Scorpion Charm, the Magic Shrouded Tier for your Physique Blast, the Shard of Alexander is fantastic here. If you're two-handing it as well, you've got the benefits from the Two-Handed Talisman. A lot of fantastic stuff with this weapon as well. And what I've always liked about this weapon and another weapon that's coming up on this list is that native Frostbite build-up on such a large weapon that does good stance damage, so you can break their stances quite quickly. Plus the AoE effect of this is also good as well, which not a lot of weapons have. But number 4 on this list does have an AoE Ash of War, and that's Mogwyn's Sacred Spear, which has blood loss build up natively. It's a great spear that does physical and fire damage. Bloodboon Ritual is the main reason you'll use this weapon here, because you thrust the weapon up in the air up to 3 times and deal an explosion of like blood and fire damage here, and then you coat the arm in blood flame for a little bit as well. The damage on this is just still incredible. Like that hasn't really changed, right? Like you get all of the fire attack buffs here, from Fire Scorpion Charm to Flame Grant Me Strength to the Flame Shrouded Cracked Tier as well. It doesn't seem to work with Ansbart's set, I don't think, though I may be wrong there. Someone can let me know in the comments, but I feel like it should work with that, because like it's, you know, like his stat, like it's part of like his dynasty skills. I don't know, it feels a little weird to me, but even still, it's just a fantastic weapon that does great stance damage. You can hold a shield here and like poke through the shield if you wanted to go that route. Plus just the damage on Bloodboon Ritual is so strong here that you don't really need to run anything else. Number 3 is Darkmoon Greatsword. This is a physical magic greatsword that has Frostbite buildup, that has Moonlight Greatsword as its skill here. Now, because this is a skill that you only need to use to essentially buff your weapon, most of the attacks here aren't actually going to be consuming FP. So if you're using this weapon, you don't really need FP at all, right? You've got that unique R2, which fires out the projectile like that Moon Wave, which has great Frostbite buildup on it. Now you can buff this because it can be charged with something like Godfrey Icon, you know, your Axe Talisman here as well. You've obviously got the Shard of Alexander, which will buff it. And then on top of that, you've got all those magic buffs that we've talked about in this video as well. And it does actually work with the two-handed talisman as well. But the difference here is that you actually have to hit the enemy with the weapon part of that attack. If you don't hit them with the weapon, the two-handed talisman benefits don't actually translate to the R2 effect from like Moonlight Greatsword, right? So just make sure you're hitting them if you are using that talisman. But like regardless here, this is still like probably the best intelligence weapon in the game right now, because of the Frostbite buildup, because of its fantastic damage scaling, because of the fact that you get like essentially a free ranged attack with its R2 once you've buffed it with Moonlight Greatsword. It's just like fantastic all across the board. Number 2 is the Blood Fiend's Arm. This is a colossal weapon that still has quite ridiculous blood loss buildup on the weapon. Now, it was slightly nerfed in the last patch to like fix some of the fact that it just did a ridiculous amount of blood loss buildup. It's still really, really good. The heavy attack here still does like that little blood effect as well. Now here, you obviously want to change the Ash of War and put the blood affinity on it for the great blood loss build-up scaling. The Lord of Blood's Exaltation is fantastic here. White Mask, the two-handed talisman, because you are using that R2 damage hit when you're like attacking to really get that benefits off. Like, you know, you can charge it with the Axe Talisman. I do think they're going to nerf this again, and it's probably going to fall like further down this list, but I don't think they're going to remove the fact that that R2 does like that little blood pop, and then you can put, you know, blood affinity on the weapon as well, which still is fantastic, right? So it probably will get nerfed a little bit, but it's still fantastic, and that's why it sits at number 2. Number 1 is still the Blasphemous Blade. This is the best faith weapon, and arguably, well, is the best weapon in the game still today, even after the nerfs that it did get, like with the patch that just went live before the DLC that removed like the massive amount of poise damage you get from Taker's Flame, as well as the knockback on smaller enemies. It doesn't even matter, like literally at all, because now you've got the two-handed talisman to buff the basic attacks if you're two-handing it. You've also got the Talisman of Dread, which does work with Taker's Flame to give you extra damage on top of, you know, Fire Scorpion Charm, Flame Grant Me Strength, Flame Shrouded Cracked Tier, obviously Shard of Alexander. Now, all of that combined, you've got a ranged Ash of War that deals fantastic damage that also heals you. Like, I just made a build using all of this stuff together, and I'll link that here if you want more information about this weapon, but it's still incredible. Like, it's still the best weapon in the game. That hasn't changed, unfortunately, I guess, but that's still the way it goes. But let me know your personal list in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza. I hope you have a great day.